All right, so we're going to be looking at Romans chapter 11 today. We're up to 11. We're getting there. So we're going to do the first 10 verses today. But do you ever sometimes feel like you're the only one that is a Christian, that believes by faith, and like a true believer, not somebody that says, yeah, I'm a Christian, but they don't go to church, they don't display any of the fruit that we know we're supposed to display and stuff like that. Their lifestyle does not show that. Do you ever feel that you are like the only one that around or whatever that actually lives for God? Do you ever get that feeling sometimes?
With our family, they're all, yeah.
Okay.
All in that category.
Yeah. And just in the general world, I mean, when we go to, if like you say, family or that doesn't believe or whatever, or if we're with some of us that are still working our jobs and things and stuff like that, or we go out just driving down the road, you see a lot of craziness out there, and you just wonder if am I the only one that truly believes in God and wants to live for Him and everything. And so we're going to kind of look at that today. I mean, Paul's touched on it in some of these other chapters earlier in the book of Romans. He's talked about it a little bit and stuff, and we're going to look at it a little more in depth today. So and Paul has a heart for the Jews to accept the salvation by grace. A lot of the Jews and some of the Jews and the Jews today are still thinking that it's by the works, keeping the laws, keeping everything, trying to do the laws, even adhere to the laws, even though we know that perfection is not possible. And so but a lot of them would not accept that salvation by grace and just by faith alone, faith and confession. And so Paul's got a heart for that. He said a couple chapters ago, we discussed it, he would give up his salvation if it meant that the rest of the Jews would be saved. But of course we know that's not possible. And so, that wasn't possible for him. But so we're going to look at this today. Let's jump right in. We're going to go read verses 1 through 4 first, and then we'll hopefully get through the rest of it. I say then, has God cast away his people? Certainly not. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, the tribe of Benjamin. God has not cast away his people whom he foreknew. Or do you not know what the scripture says of Elijah, how he pleads with God against Israel, saying, O Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and now they seek my life. What does the divine response say to him? I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. All right, we're going to stop there. All right, we're going to talk about what he's talking about here. Anybody know this? Anybody know this part of Elijah's life?
A little bit.
A little bit? A little bit? Okay.
Well, they had a discussion, and he suggested that they see what their gods could do, what your God could do, and what mine.
Right.
400 prophets of Baal, yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's really kind of a testament to what we experience, because the story that he's referring to here is in 1 Kings 19, and I'm going to look at some of the verses from that chapter. But in chapter 18, Elijah has this battle, as Hank and Linda are referring to here, that against the prophets of Baal. And, they're blaming, there's a drought going on in the land, and the King Ahab, who was married to Queen Jezebel, and we all know the name Jezebel, it's just synonymous with big time problems. Okay. Right. And so we see that, and Ahab's blaming Elijah for the drought because Elijah had said it will not rain until I say it's going to rain again. So basically he kind of was to blame for the drought, but God was the one that was doing it. He was just speaking what God said and stuff. And so they were wanting to get him. They were wanting to get Elijah. Well, then he wanted to prove that God was more powerful. I don't know why when a man of God says it's not going to rain and for 3 years it doesn't rain. That alone to me would tell me that God is powerful. I wouldn't need a big demonstration of what happens and everything.
I mean,
Okay.
some people would still probably doubt it.
Well, yeah, some people don't get the hint. So,
They just think it's
but
coincidence.
right. So anyway, so he has this battle with the prophets of Baal, and they each build an altar and offer a sacrifice to one to Baal, one to God of Elijah. And Elijah has them on his throw a whole bunch of water and everything else on it because they want to see which God will respond first and burn up the offering and the sacrifice and everything. And so he has them throw a whole bunch of water on it, which is going to make it even harder for the offering to get burnt up because now it's soaked. You know, my thing is where are they getting all this water in the middle of a drought? But, you know, so I guess they're getting it out of the sea or the ocean or, you know, whatever and stuff.
I think Mount Carmel is right close to the sea. So.
Yeah, that had to have been where they were getting it from. So, but it's all good. So, but they did this, and Elijah's the God of Elijah responded because we know that he's the one true God. He responded. He come down and he burned up the offering, and then he burned up the other offering to Baal as well. And so, you know, there was no doubt.
And it wasn't a delay; it was immediate.
Right, it was immediate when.
Right as Elijah was saying.
Right.
Praying to him, bam! Both offerings were burned up in an instant.
Exactly. And the prophets of Baal had been over there cutting themselves and dancing around and trying. And Elijah was taunting him, saying, hey, maybe you need to shout louder because maybe your God's asleep, you know, and stuff. I mean, so yeah, so it's, you know, maybe he's busy, you know, who knows what's going on, you know, but obviously your God's not listening. And then immediately, like Robbie said, immediately he comes down. Well, then, so that happened. So this is a great victory for Elijah. All the prophets of Baal are killed. He puts them to death and everything, and everybody believes. And Ahab goes home and he tells Ahab, he says, well, the rain will come now. And so Ahab goes home and he's all happy and everything. Well, Jezebel's not happy because she followed Baal. She followed Baal. And so she sends word to Elijah, if the time comes tomorrow, basically by this time tomorrow, if I have not killed you, then you'll be fortunate. Basically saying, I'm going to kill you in the next 24 hours. And so what does Elijah do?
Tell somebody that. But
Well,
she had to say that, right?
Yeah, apparently. So, you know, right. So I don't know.
She's the queen. It's like when a mob boss tries to send out a note or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, but so anyway, so what's Elijah do? Elijah's celebrating his great victory. God's responded and shown him everything. So what do you think he does? Does he stand there and stand his ground and say, I ain't scared of you, Jezebel. You ain't going to be able to touch me. No, he runs. He takes off. He's scared for his life.
We misbehave sometimes, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, scared for his life. He takes off. And you can see the story, you know, like I say, the story here in 19 or whatever. And he runs away. And he gets out and eventually he ends up sleeping. He come to underneath the broom tree, whatever that is. And he prayed and he prays to God. And that was in verse 4. He gets down there and he gets under a broom tree and he prays to God that God would let him die. He's like, God, just kill me now. Just take me now because she's going to kill me and I'd rather you take me than her kill me. And so,
like he was going to stand around and wait for her to come.
Right.
I was just about to
And
say,
so,
She wasn't literally going to be the one that killed
no, she wasn't, but she was going to, oh yeah, one of her minions out to do it. But
I mean,
exactly.
If the
So,
queen tells you to do something, would you give her a response saying no?
Probably not. Not
well,
as
he's
bad as
not, the queen didn't say run. The queen was just saying, I'm going to get you. So, but anyway, so he he ends up falling asleep under this broom tree after he prays for God to take him. And an angel comes and wakes him up and feeds him. He's got food there, whatever, food and water. And then he falls asleep again, and another angel comes after a while and feeds him again or whatever. And then he gets up and he goes to Mount Sinai. And so we're going to pick it up there. I'm going to read 1 Kings 19:10 through 18. And it says, so he said, I have been, well, in verse 9, God asks him, what are you doing here, Elijah? Why are you here? This isn't where I left you. You were supposed to be here proclaiming my name. Why are you here in this cave? And so he says, so God's asking him, what are you doing here, Elijah? In verse 10, he says, so he said, I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I am the only one left, and now they seek my life. Then God, and so I'm going to stop there for a minute. Has anybody ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like, here he is, he's been doing all this work, he's done all this great stuff, he's been a prophet of God, and he just feels like nobody's listening. Nobody's responding to his message. Have we ever had that? Have we ever been witnessing to somebody or talking to somebody? Or I know Hank has expressed many times that he's got family that he just it breaks his heart that they're not saved. And he tries and everything, but they just don't respond. And, so I know Hank can relate to this, but has anybody else had this issue where you just have a heart for somebody so powerful and yet they don't respond, and you feel like you've wasted all this effort and all this time? Has anybody had that? Y'all being quiet today.
Well, he ran all
Stop
the
it.
way. He was tired. You can get yourself in such a state of tiredness. I've been there right now.
Right.
That your mind just doesn't work right.
Right. And so, but he thinks that that's what's going on. That's why he wants God to take him. Basically, he feels useless. He feels useless. And he's telling God this.
Maybe a little guilty for running off.
Well, maybe, but so anyway, so we'll keep on here. So God tells him, he says, then he said, go out to and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And so it was, when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. All right, we're going to stop there for a second. Okay, two things here. First of all, are we looking for God to move in big, huge, powerful ways all the time? Do we think that every time we give an invitation here at church, it needs to be a Billy Graham crusade where everybody comes forward? We got thousands of people coming forward all the time. Or does God work in the still small voices, as it says here?
Right.
Elijah knew. He knew when God was speaking to him. He knew what to look for. It wasn't in all this stuff. I mean, a huge wind, and then an earthquake, and then a fire. I'm in a cave, and there's a big wind, an earthquake, and a fire. I'd be kind of like, whoa, God, okay, hold up, all right, I'm listening, but that wasn't Elijah. He waited. He waited through all that stuff. God doesn't always get our attention with the huge things. He wants us to be focused, listening for the still small voice, for the small things in our life, the small pricks on our heart to do something.
Right.
We get them all the time. You're standing in a grocery store line and you see somebody all stressed out and upset or whatever. Do you speak a kind word to them, or do you just like, whoa, I ain't talking to them, they're kind of crazy, But yet you feel that prick from the Holy Spirit saying on your heart and on your mind or whatever, saying, speaking love to that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we should be looking for. God can do big things. But God also moves, and more often he moves in the still small voice. Right?
That's the ones we tend to ignore.
Exactly. God will come down and burn up the altar and the other altar and just have a big theatric show. God can do those things. And he will from time to time. Right? But it's the still small events, voice in your life that truly is what God's wanting us to pay attention to. That's going to happen more often. And like Pam said, a lot of times we're going to miss it because we're not listening for it.
But we're not sure, so we don't follow it.
Right. Exactly. So, and like the example I used about in the grocery store or whatever, I mean, you feel that prick from God to speak a kind word to this person or something, but why do we not do it?
I spoke to somebody, she was behind me at the checkout line at Harris Teeter on Friday, and it was hot on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I got, somehow rushing in and out, I got overheated, but
Okay.
the lady behind me, I was outside and Hank had pulled the car around and loading up everything, and
Mm-hmm.
here she came and she spoke to me then
Okay.
when she left,
Right.
and I think that's a good example. She maybe needed to talk to somebody.
Maybe.
Or just
Exactly.
that personal contact.
Right.
You know, if you live by yourself or even two people like us, you kind of need to see some other people and
Yeah.
talk to
Right.
them once in a while.
And that's why we don't know what's going on in other people's lives. That's why when we get that the Holy Spirit tells us, speak to that person, we need to do it. Okay, it's not going to hurt us, even if they think we're crazy and they yell and scream at us or whatever. Okay, if you get yelled and screamed at for doing something, for speaking a kind word to somebody and trying to encourage them, then don't worry about it, because God sees those things. And as Paul tells us, if you get mistreated for doing what is right, don't worry, because yes, you may be mistreated in this life, but you will be rewarded in the next life. I've heard the expression, and I'm sure we've all heard it. Well, that's what I get for doing something good. Every time I try to do something good, it just blows up in my face, or it doesn't work out. Okay, no, it might not work out here, but there's going to come a day when we're going to stand before God and we're going to give an account for how we spent our life. And the things that are of value and will be put, will be put to the test, will be put to the fire, and the things that we did that are of value will be stand and will be rewarded for those. The things that are not of value, that will be burnt up, will suffer loss. We won't get rewarded for those things, even though we think we might be doing it for good reasons and whatever. If it's not good, if it's not what God wanted, and it's not helping or doing whatever, then they'll get burnt up. And so, and we'll still be saved, as it says in Revelation and stuff. And I believe Paul talks about it, or Peter, one of them talks about it. Yes, we'll still be saved, but we won't get rewarded for those things. Okay. So, but, anyway, so yeah, so let me continue on here. So then he says, and he wrapped, the second point is, because he was going to see God, he had to wrap his face in mantle, in his cloak and whatever, because they could not see the face of God because they would die. We see that in Isaiah 6, where Isaiah has a vision of the throne room, and he sees God, he sees the holy, and he says, I am a wretched man, I am dead. I am a dead man now, because I am a wretched man and I am among wretched people. And they're but then an angel flies over and puts a coal on his lip and stuff, and John, when he saw the glorified Christ, fell down like a dead man, because, us in our bodies and our finite, we can't look upon the glory of God without dying. And that's why when Moses wanted to see God, he says, you can't see my face, but I'll let you see my back. And so, but that'd be a good topic sometime. Talk about during Sunday school. I may have to put that in my notes and come back to that one. But anyway, so he went to the entrance to the cave, wrapped his face up, went to the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He said, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down all your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking to take my life." Then the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Syria. Also you shall anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshai, as king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Snaphat of Abel, Melanhan, you shall anoint as prophet in your place. You shall be that what it shall be that whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu will kill, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha will kill. Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." All right. So he's telling Elijah here, "Go anoint this guy as king. I've chosen him to be the next king over Syria. Go anoint this guy as well, and then anoint Elisha to take your place." Okay? He doesn't say he's going to kill him. He just says, go anoint him to take your place. He's going to be the next prophet of God. And so he's going to let him, he's going to answer his prayer, but he's not going to answer it in the way that Elijah's thinking. Elijah wants to go now. Elijah's tired. He wants to go now. He just had to have an angel give him substance. So what Paul's saying here, getting back to Romans, what Paul's saying here is that you know, there's always a remnant. There's always some. Paul's saying that not all of the Jews, the Jewish people, have rejected the message. There's always some. God always saves some for it. He always saves a remnant. We're going to see that in the book of Revelation. Let me back that train up a minute. In the book of Revelation, we see that there's 144,000 Jews, 12,000 from each tribe, that will be witnesses to the people, to the work of God here on the earth. Okay. Now, when we did talk, we spent all that time in Revelation. We talked about that and everything, and there's a lot of people that believe a lot of different things on that, you know. But it's very clear that there are 12,000 from each tribe that will be witnesses of the Lord God Almighty during that time, and that they will stay. They will make it until the end, because they will not be killed. They will have protection, the hand of God on them. Now, some people believe that those are the only ones that are going to be saved during the tribulation period. I don't believe that. Why are they witnessing then?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are they telling other people then? What's the point if nobody else can be saved? Okay,
Yeah.
Once you take the mark, you can't be saved. But there are going to be a lot of people. We see it in our country. We see, as divided as we get and as much mistrust as we get about one side of the political aisle or the other, we see people that, you know, there's going to be people that, when it comes down to you got to have this mark, people are going to try to find other ways to live, just not because they think it's a religious thing or a spiritual thing, but just because they don't want to bow down to an authority. They don't want to have to get that mark in order to live.
They want to keep their freedom.
Right, they want to keep their freedoms. And so there's going to be a group that might not be for God, that will still be here fighting to stay alive, and also can possibly be saved because they have not taken the mark of the beast, of you know, the Antichrist dictates.
And even then, before the mark comes into play.
Right. So there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to be on board with this, and they're going to be sought after and killed and whatever and stuff. And we just hope that they, you know, come to faith before that happens. So anyways, but there's a remnant. There's going to be a remnant in all the way through to the end. God always reserves some. Okay? And that's what he was doing here with Elijah. He was telling Elijah, there's 7,000 of you, more just like you out here that you don't know them, but I know them. They haven't bowed to Baal. I know their heart. All right? So we should never get to the point where we think that we're the only ones out here.
Right.
Okay? First and foremost, that they're and we come to church. We see every week. We see people. We talk to people that we know from the church family and stuff like that. That we know these people are, that we know that we're not the only ones. It's good, and so we know that, and so that's what he's saying here. That's what he's saying here with this story about Elijah. Okay, so all right. So let's read verses 5 through 10 here. Okay. It says, even so then, at this present time there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And if by grace, then it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. But if it is of works, it is no longer grace. Otherwise, work is no longer work. What then? Israel has not obtained what it seeks, but the elect have obtained it, and the rest were blinded. Just as it is written, God has given them a spirit of stupor, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear, to this very day. And David says, let their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a recompense to them. Let their eyes be darkened so that they do not see, and bow down their backs always. Okay? So what's he saying here? What's he saying here? He's saying that there's a remnant, that there are Jews that have accepted the message and that are not living by works alone. All right? And the part of what's breaking his heart is that some of the Jews have gotten to the point where they don't see and they don't hear the message, even though it's being proclaimed loudly. They don't see it, they don't hear it, they don't get it. Do we see that in our culture today?
Yeah, we do.
We got churches all over the place in this county, and yet Danny tells us stats that 80% of our county is unchurched.
Yeah.
Why we got all these churches everywhere then? Yeah. I mean, and we're, so, I mean, but yet 80% of the county is not churched. They don't go to church, they don't acknowledge God, they don't, nothing. They'd rather go to the lake or rather go travel ball or, all these other stuff they'd rather do than to be in church. All right? Are their eyes and ears getting to the point where they're no longer going to hear? Because that's what Paul's talking about here. He's saying that if you deny God and his calling long enough on your life, then you're not going to be able to hear it anymore. You're not going to see it anymore. You might not even see the churches when you pass by. You might not recognize anything of God anymore. And be living in a darkened world. We talked about it either in 9 or 10 or something like that, about how with Pharaoh, he was using the example of Pharaoh, that Pharaoh's heart, because he lived a lifestyle and a lifetime of rejecting God so much, that God gave Pharaoh what he wanted. And that's what that's what God's doing with the Jews in Paul's day, and that's what God does with us. If we ignore God and reject God repeatedly, then God's going to give us what we want. He's going to confirm our choices and the consequences of our choices. God doesn't send you to hell. You send yourself there.
Right.
I've talked many times about you got people that you don't want to, that just drive you crazy so much and don't want anything to do with you now, or maybe they don't drive you crazy, but they don't want you try to be with them and they don't want anything to do with you. but then all of a sudden they're going to turn around and act like you're their best friend. I mean, how do we accept that? No, we don't. You got to prove to me that you really want to change the way that you've treated me and all that stuff. You treated me horribly all this time. Now, well, same thing with God. God does not want to be in eternity with people that have denied his existence and wanted nothing to do with him in their life. Those are the people that end up in hell because they choose to go there.
Yeah.
And so we got to be careful, okay? Because they will, if we're doing that, then we'll be struck with blindness. We'll be struck with deafness. It'll be right in front of us, but we won't be able to see it. We won't be able to hear it. Paul experienced this on the Damascus Road. He was on his way to go kill more Christians. He was trying to hunt them down and kill them. And what did God do? Knocked him off his horse and struck him with blindness and then spoke to him. Now, what if Paul was just kind of like dumbfounded about falling off the horse and being blinded or whatever and thought, well, I guess I turned blind because I fell off the horse, and he didn't pay attention to God talking to him? What would have happened to Paul? Probably would have never heard the voice of God again.
Yeah.
But he heard it. And he was aware of it. And look at how he turned his life around. And I'm sure he would have stayed blind, because the only reason that God allowed him to have his sight back after 3 days is because he was genuinely, okay, God, you got me. I'm going to do this. And God told Ananias, he said, he will suffer greatly for what he has done. And he told Paul that too. And Paul did suffer greatly. I don't know how many times that man was shipwrecked. Got bit by a snake. They tried to stone him. They wanted to kill him. He was running for his life a lot of times. But also he was in prison a lot of times. But when he's in prison, he was praying for boldness and wanting to be with, have an impact on the guards that were guarding him. He was serious about it. So, but it's and the weight of the consequences, the choices that we make will cause these things in our lives. And if we continue to choose other things other than God, or to let bitterness or anger, or we're unforgiving to people, and we don't treat people good, and we're not, yes, everybody makes mistakes. None of us are perfect. Some people don't change their ways as quickly as we would like, and they continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, and say and do things that are just kind of like crazy and stuff. But we got to show them love, and we got to show them grace and forgiveness, because we've been given grace and forgiveness and love from God. Okay, yes, we don't want them to walk all over us, but we need to be understanding and try to help them to see, okay, lighten up a little, or quit being so mean. That kind of thing and stuff. And so, but we need to be concerned, because those people might be getting to the point where their spiritual world is going dark. And if your spiritual world is going dark, then you got a real problem, and it'll be an eternal problem. So, so he's saying here that there's always a remnant, and that those people, that there are people out there that are gonna stay faithful, and we need to align ourselves with them. So, any questions, thoughts, comments?